All right. The indictment of Donald Trump, it is historic. It is unprecedented. We can't stop talking about it.
Mr. Trump is the first former president in U.S. history to face criminal charges. Right now, all eyes are on Lower Manhattan as we await the arraignment of the former president, expected to happen tomorrow. Now, the exact charges have not been formally announced, but the case is focused on a hush money payment to a porn star during his 2016 campaign. Attorney Joe Tacopina says his client is ready to fight.
He's gearing up for a battle. This is something that obviously we believe is a political persecution, and I think people on both sides of the aisle believe that it's a complete abuse of power.
Joining us right now with what we can expect, Jeremy Saland, criminal defense attorney, former assistant district attorney in the Manhattan DA's office. Nice to have you here. So you worked in the DA's office how long ago?
2000 to 2007.
Okay, I'm sure things have changed, but not that much. What's going on right now? What's the process? What do we need to know?
So in terms of the process, I think it should go technically smoothly, meaning it's pretty standard. The president should surrender and be fingerprinted, mugshot, brought to the courtroom. But we know with this president and just the fact that it is the president and unprecedented, that anything but standard could certainly happen. So he'll be arraigned, he'll plead not guilty. We should not expect to hear too much in that courtroom, and it should be a fairly quick process. But there's a lot of balls going up in the air right now, a lot of juggling.
So let me ask you something, because this is unprecedented.
Yes.
In your experience being in the Manhattan DA's office, how influenced were you by politics?
Under Morgenthau, there were no politics, at least that filtered down to the run-of-the-mill assistants, the line assistants, if you will. So, I don't think there was that much. Now I'd like to think the same thing, and I believe that we should, in good faith, believe that law enforcement is doing things for the right reason. They're completing their investigations and pursuing their investigations for the right reasons. That being said, if they are not, the public will know, and there's consequences for betraying that public trust.
But the public already believes that this is politically motivated. A lot of them do. You're not saying all of them. So how do you counter that? Because you say, I like to believe, but what's the but mean?
Well, the but is we don't know. We're not in that courtroom. We're not in that grand jury. But when I say that we'd like to believe, to a certain extent, it doesn't matter what the public believes because they're not in that grand jury room. They're not part of that investigation. Believing something doesn't make it the truth. What is the evidence? Would someone else be pursued and prosecuted if they did the same or similar crime? And then there's those who believe that if you're involved in the public trust as an elected official, you should be held to a higher standard, not just like another regular person.
I think to aid to the transparency, I know Alvin Bragg's office sent a letter to 3 Republican House committee chairs that the AP got a hold of, basically asking them to withdraw their demands for information to let the criminal justice process play out without unlawful political interference. And they're just asking for certain things like jury testimony, documents, copies of communications with the Justice Department. That's transparency. The DA's office is saying, stop.
Well, I think the DA's office needs to also treat this like they would any other case. Just because Jim Jordan writes a letter saying you need to turn this over and you have to come to my committee and testify doesn't make it so. I think law enforcement, the district attorney's office has a job, and they have to stay to the 4 corners of that indictment, stay to the 4 corners of that courtroom, and not be swayed by what someone on the right or someone on the left would think. And I would just share that if we were in Florida, for example, and it was a prosecution of a Democratic individual, would it automatically be political? Not necessarily so.
So let's talk about Michael Cohen, because he seems to be the key witness in this case. Advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons.
Well, if I was on the prosecution team, I would be concerned because he continues to run his mouth, for lack of a better way to say it.
Even now?
Even now. It seems a little glib. I've seen some of the interviews where he takes a couple shots, and you don't want your key witness to be speaking and singing and saying things because eventually you fear that they're going to say something inconsistent and open the door for that cross-examination or attack on his credibility later on. So there is that concern. In terms of him being involved in dirty already, well, what do you expect if you're investigating a crime? You expect those who would be your witnesses would have some criminal involvement. Otherwise, they wouldn't know what's going on.
So let's talk about maybe step by step about tomorrow. So the president will be arraigned tomorrow. Do you think they will mugshot him, fingerprint him, even though they got plenty of pictures and they got his fingerprints because he has a gun permit?
Yes, absolutely. So he needs to be fingerprinted like anybody else, because that identifying information that creates what's called a NICE or New York State ID number. So he'll be fingerprinted. I don't expect them to be handcuffing him, putting him in a cell.
He wants to be handcuffed.
That may be very true, and it makes for great showmanship, but I don't think it necessarily benefits him or anyone for that matter. But he's not going to be put in central booking. It's going to be a walkthrough. And it could be a very quick process. Could be a couple hours to get your fingerprints back, and when you get before that judge, 10, 15, 30 minutes at most.
What happens in your mind, how this plays out if this indictment doesn't turn into a conviction for Alvin Bragg? Same matter for former President Donald Trump.
There's a lot on the line, because by default, I believe if there is not a conviction, that the presumption is going to be that this was really a hack job. And that's not necessarily, again, fair. You could take a hard case and not get a conviction. Doesn't mean it wasn't a just cause or just pursuit, but by the appearance, it certainly will be poor and bad for him. I think the president will use this regardless. If there's not a conviction, look I fought for you and I won. I am the victim here. And if there is a conviction, this is just a hoax and it's going to rally his base.
I mean, we certainly know it did. Within the first 24 hours of the indictment coming through, they raised over $4+ million in 24 hours.
That's
crazy.
That is impressive. That is quite impressive.
All right. Well, we appreciate your perspective and experience and sharing it with us. If people need you, because now you're a criminal defense, you're on the other side.
That I am.
You could have been defending Donald Trump.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Maybe me and Rosanna, this is knock on wood. We don't have to call you up for any personal favors. Yeah.
So where can people find you if they need you?
I'm on Duane St, Lower Manhattan, but Jeremy Saland, it's my law firm. It's been many years, so they can find me online or anywhere else.
Thank you, Mr. Saland.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.